Alright guys, so welcome back to the channel, welcome back into another video. We have the final red zone video on both the Gammas, and I have to say they are definitely up there as two of the best TURs in the game and currently on global. Before the release of Vegeta and Trunks, it easily goes, personally for me, Birdku, Hello Final Form Cooler, Gamma 1, Gamma 2. Like, it just, for me, it just has to. For me, it just has to. If yours is a little bit different, you know, some above others, like there's a slight bit of rearranging, but kind of the same units are here, but, you know, within that, you know, maybe like Ginyu is above like Gamma 2. I completely understand. That's okay, you know, no debate needed. It's entirely your preference, but for me right now, that's how it sits. They are that good. Now, in terms of how they do against BROLY, they were great. They were great. Of course, they're surrounded by some of the best units in the game. They're surrounded by BROLY's Kryptonite, which of course is EZA Tech God Goku, so he's tanking everything to nothing. Gamma 1, for pretty much the entire fight, is tanking everything for nothing. So we have two amazing slot 1 units. We even have Birdku in slot 3, who's tanking pretty much everything for not nothing per se in the beginning, or without guaranteed guard, which for the most part of this run he actually does have, but pretty much he's tanking incredibly well. As long as the, you know, the gods and the SSJ4s, once they are transformed and fused, are getting off their 18 keys, and the additional, they're good. So there's not really much risk of fight aside from like the wrong unit at one given point potentially in the final phase against BROLY. That's really going to take that much damage. And that's basically how this went. Now, of course, in the time we need to build the Gammas up, specifically with, and especially with Gamma 1, you know, we do have his guard for 4 turns, so building him up is no problem at all. No matter how much damage BROLY will do, whether that's being supered in the first phase, the second phase, he doesn't get supered, but the second phase can catch you off guard. Like, you could be hit with like a 400 or 500k super from this part of BROLY. Even here, if he was to be supered, we would have some form of build up, however much it is, but some form of build up, and also again still have his guard. So even here we'll be taking no unnecessary damage, and depending on how quickly you can get through this phase, which with the units that are surrounding these guys, and to be fair, the amount of damage that both Gammas can do themselves, especially with Gamma 2's additionals built in and stuff like that, especially if they do come off the super attacks, you could potentially get away with having 1 turn of guard against the strength phase, which can really stop you in your tracks, of course, with the AoE. And with having Gamma 2 next to you, having type advantage, especially if he gets the super attack first, and then having like Birdku in slot 3, or, you know, maybe one of the gods or the SSJ4s, and maybe use a Whis, 1 Whis, don't even have to double Whis, maybe 1 Whis just to make sure you get through, you're probably going to take literally hardly any damage in that turn whatsoever. So, I mean, the Gammas are just generally ridiculous. I would have to say this isn't even a flaw, because this is part of Gamma 1's kit, but it's kind of, it's a little bit annoying, but obviously this is how he's built. It would just be nice if you could have the guard for longer. Like, it would be nice if you could have the guard when you really would want it and would really need it, which is specifically in the final phase when Gamma 1 has type disadvantage. And even then, it's not really a problem that he doesn't have it. Like, it would be nice to cover him for super attacks. I haven't seen him be supered by BROLY at the end. But I can imagine even with 50% damage reduction, and even if he's supered, you know, has like, because we had the support memory, he had almost 400k defense, like 360, 370, links up with Gamma 2, raising his defense by 30%. Once again, even though he does have a dupe, no additionals, things like that. For some reason, when I get dupes in units, they just don't like getting the dupe system additionals, and sometimes even crits come off. They just don't want to do them. But I think even if he double supered and raised his defense twice, had 50% damage reduction, I still think because of how hard BROLY hits, you know, you're talking over a mil, and also of course the big thing being type disadvantage, I do think he would still be hit by quite a bit of damage. If that was the case and you had a Whis active, or even for 1 super, you would still probably take a decent chunk, but obviously a lot less, and you would probably survive. But in terms of basics, because this was my second time attempting this, I got quite unlucky on the first one and died. But Gamma 1, even pre-super, before he's raised his attack and defense against BROLY in the final phase, he still tanks for double digits. And a unit tanking for double digits against someone who's one of the hardest hitting bosses in the entire game while having type disadvantage is incredibly, incredibly impressive. And I said that's even before he supers. That is before he raises his attack and defense by 30% for one turn. Just 50% damage reduction, almost 400k defense. He will tank BROLY with type disadvantage for double digits, which I think is incredibly, incredibly impressive, because there are hardly any units in the game, even still now, that can do that. With type disadvantage specifically, there are hardly any units in the game that can do that against BROLY. So yeah, Gamma 1, easily one of the best TURs in the game. Gamma 2 actually still done very well. You know, they both share this in terms of, yes, BROLY's one of the hardest bosses in the game, one of the hardest red zone stages. But because early on, even though BROLY can still hit quite hard, because of how easy it is to build both of them up, because, you know, you're putting Gamma 1 in slot 1 to take all the hits, which primarily a lot of the time, like from my experience from red zone, majority of the time, most of the attacks in a turn are coming in slot 1. And especially the super attack more importantly. But in general, the majority of the attacks that are coming in a turn are in slot 1, which means Gamma 1 gets built up almost immediately. So he's taking no extra unnecessary damage in the build up getting into the final phase, where you want to save as many items as possible, especially now that it's actually doable to save your Whis rather than double Whis during the strength phase. And that way you actually have some items at the end if you really want to, or like, you know, if you really need them. And then because of the built-in additionals from Gamma 2, again, it literally, he'll be fully brought up by the second turn he appears, which means he's good to go. And yes, he doesn't have damage reduction or guard or anything like Gamma 1, but Gamma 2 will have like just almost 300k, if not just over 300k defense on the 170 lead, which means after he super attacks and raises attack and defense by 30%, you'll still have like a turn or two left of him additionaling as many times as he does, which I'm pretty sure is twice. So you're constantly dishing out potentially 2, 3, maybe even 4 super attacks, which means he may raise his attack and defense 2, 3, maybe 4 times, and again be tanking BROLY for literally next to nothing, especially on the strength phase where, you know, he does a lot of damage with the AoE. Gamma 2 isn't at risk of that because of the type advantage, all the possible times he may raise his defense, especially if you fly through the phases quick enough and raise his attack and defense by 30%, you know, as I said, 2, 3, 4 times potentially. But even if you don't have the built-in additionals, and you only have the one built-up additional, I think, that you build up in his passive, he can still potentially super attack twice and raise his defense twice, which is enough while having type advantage against BROLY for him to tank him for nothing, and probably tank his supers for not too much. But not too much at all. And one of the big things is, because of the amount of times he's super attacking, and again, especially when he has type advantage against the strength phase, the AoE phase, he can actually do quite a bit of damage. Quite a bit of damage, especially while having type advantage. And then when you get to the final phase, which I was actually really impressed with this. I think it might have already happened. But what really impressed me is Gamma 2 super attacked twice. I don't think, no, he's about to do it. I don't think I had an item active at this point. Oh yeah, no, I didn't have my item active because I was ready to die because of Birdcoo's revival. Gamma 2 with no item active, 2 super attacks. So actually, potentially it was 1. I can't actually remember. It's 1 or 2 super attacks, but even so, with no item active, type neutral, no damage reduction like Gamma 1, no guard like Gamma 1 has for the 4 turns, just purely decent amount of defense and raising it by 30% on super, no item, he ends up tanking BROLY's super. Actually, no, there actually may be an item active. I think there's an item active. Yeah, no, there has to be an item active. There's definitely an item active. Take that back. There is an item active. But even so, at this point, because he's in a 170 lead, he's probably got like 600-700k defense with a Whis. He doesn't even die. I was prepared to die here because of Birdcoo getting the revival off, which we still do, but he only takes 359k damage, which to me is very impressive. I know an item is active, but a unit that doesn't have guard, damage reduction, anything like that, just has to deal with the brunt of BROLY's super attack, which again, he's still one of the hardest hitting bosses in Dokkan right now. Off of 2 super attacks and a Whis, so he has like just over 600-700k defense with a Whis, he can tank BROLY 359k. So if I didn't have like 20-30k health that I had at the start of turn, and I had a bit more, like the usual 300 to 500, maybe even 600k you would have at that point, he would have survived. He wouldn't have died. He would have survived. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe if you're new. I'll see you in the next video, guys. And peace.